The series of dramatic ultimatums and military threats issued by President Donald Trump's administration, intended to shock the Kremlin into submission, have met a chilling and violent reality on the battlefields of Ukraine. Instead of pausing its offensive or showing any sign of de-escalation, the Russian Federation has responded to Washington's pressure by unleashing one of the most intense and widespread aerial bombardment campaigns of the entire war. A relentless rain of steel and fire is currently falling on Ukrainian cities, military positions, and critical infrastructure, demonstrating with brutal clarity that Moscow is not deterred by President Trump's economic deadlines or military red lines. This ferocious Russian assault serves as a direct and bloody answer to the American strategy, creating a terrifying situation where Washington's threat appeared to have had the opposite of their intended effect, only inflaming the conflict and pushing the region closer to an all-out catastrophe. Across Ukraine, the sound of air raid sirens has become an almost constant feature of daily life, followed by the percussive thunder of explosion. The Russian military is systematically targeting key logistical hubs, energy facilities, and troops concentrations in a clear effort to cripple Ukraine's ability to continue the fight. The city of Kharkiv in the northeast, already scared by years of conflict, is enduring a new level of punishment. Russian glide bombs and missiles are striking industrial area, railway junctions, and power substations with devastating precision, plunging large parts of the city into darkness and chaos. In the south, the vital port city of Odessa has come under repeated attack from drones and cruise missiles aimed at its port infrastructure, a clear attempt to sever Ukraine's access to the Black Sea and its connections to global trade. Further north, the city of Sumy, located close to the Russian border, is being systematically shelled by artillery and pounded from the air, forcing a continuous stream of civilian evacuations. While the Russian Ministry of Defense claims it is only striking legitimate military targets, the reality on the ground is one of widespread destruction that bleeds into civilians' area. Military barracks located in urban neighborhoods, factories repurposed for arms repair, and bridges used by both civilians and the military have all been hit. The result is a rising civilian death toll and a humanitarian crisis that is deepening by the hour. Ukrainian emergency services are overwhelmed, struggling to pull survivors from the rubble of collapsed buildings and to extinguish fires that rage across the cityscape. This intense campaign is a clear strategic message from Moscow. Russia will not be intimidated. The Kremlin is demonstrating that it can inflict unbearable pain on Ukraine and that it is willing to escalate the violence on its own terms, regardless of any red lines drawn by Washington. This violent defiance has thrown the White House into a state of profound crisis. President Trump, who had expected his bold pronouncement to force an immediate change in Russian behavior, is now confronted with a situation where his adversary is publicly and violently calling his bluff. According to sources within the administration, the president is growing increasingly frustrated and angry. He is reportedly holding a series of tense meetings with his national security team, demanding to know why the threats are not working. He sees the Russian bombardment as a personal insult and a direct challenge to American power and his own authority as a world leader. His unpredictable frustration is a source of deep concern for his advisors, who fear he may lash out with an even more drastic and ill-considered action. The burden of this failure falls heavily on President Trump's cabinet, where the pre-existing fracture have now widened to deep charms. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth is in an almost impossible position. His advocacy for a strong military posture has led to the current red line policy, and now he must manage the consequences of that policy being openly tested. The Pentagon is on its highest state of alert, with U.S. Navy ships in the Mediterranean and North Atlantic reportedly carrying full complements of Tomahawk missiles, ready to execute a strike order at a moment's notice. The central agonizing question being debated in the Pentagon's operations centers is what precisely constitute a crossing of the widespread and deliberate strategic bombing red line. Russia's current campaign is pushing the boundaries of that definition, hitting strategic targets within cities in a way that causes massive collateral damage, but allows Moscow to plausibly deny that it is deliberately targeting civilians. Secretary Hegseth is under immense pressure to provide a clear recommendation to the president, knowing that a decision to strike would likely trigger a direct war, while a decision not to strike could be seen as a humiliating retreat. This ambiguity is creating a nightmare for the intelligence community. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard finds herself in the exact situation she warned against. Her agencies are working around the clock analyzing satellite imagery, intercepting communications, and gathering human intelligence from the ground to assess the nature and intent of every single Russian strike. The pressure to make a definite call to say, yes, this specific attack crossed the red line is immense. A mistake in either direction could be catastrophic. Director Gabbard is reportedly continuing to advise the president that Russia is deliberately operating in this gray zone, daring the United States to act. She has warned that the Kremlin is baiting the US into either a massive overreaction or a public display of weakness. The intelligence assessment is that the Russian leadership believes the internal divisions in Washington and the deep anxiety among NATO allies make it unlikely that the US will actually pull the trigger on a Tomahawk strike. The diplomatic situation managed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio has completely unraveled. The trust between the United States and its European allies is at an all-time low. The emergency meeting of the North Atlantic Council was, according to European diplomatic sources, a scene of open anger and fear. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte struggled to maintain order as representatives from member states expressed their fury that President Trump's decision to authorize Ukrainian strike on Moscow had endangered the entire continent without any consultation. They now see the intensified Russian bombing campaign as the direct and predictable result of this reckless American policy. European leaders feel trapped. They are watching a US-Russia confrontation escalate on their soil, driven by decisions made in Washington and Kyiv, over which they have no control. Secretary Rubio is left with the thankless task of trying to reassure allies that the US has a coherent strategy, a message that is increasingly difficult to deliver with any credibility. Nowhere is the pressure more acute than in Kyiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is facing an almost unimaginable dilemma. The authorization to use American ATACMS missiles to strike Moscow and St. Petersburg was supposed to be his ultimate trump card. Instead, it has become a source of agonizing indecision as he watched his country burn. The intensified Russian bombing campaign is a form of brutal coercion designed to force his hand. The debate within his own government has reached a fever pitch. His top military generals are arguing more forcefully than ever that they must use the missile immediately. They contend that the current Russian onslaught proves that Russia will never stop unless it feels the same pain it is inflicting. They see a strike on Moscow as the only path to survival. Conversely, other advisors are pleading for restraint. They argue that this is a trap. They believe Russia is deliberately provoking a Ukrainian strike on its capital to provide a pretext for a final, overwhelming escalation, which could include the use of tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine. They fear that President Trump would not risk a full nuclear exchange with Russia to save Ukraine after it had taken the first shot at Moscow. President Zelensky is therefore left with a grim calculus of survival. Does he absorb the punishing Russian bombardment, hoping his army can hold out until the 50-day economic ultimatum takes effect? Or does he unleash the American missiles, risking immediate and total annihilation in a desperate bid to end the war? Every bomb that falls on a Ukrainian city increases the pressure on him to make this fateful choice. The world watched in horror as the crisis deepened. The United Nations has become a forum for little more than helpless speeches and condemnation, with its Security Council paralyzed by the Russian veto. In Beijing, the Chinese government has called for an immediate ceasefire, while its state media blames the entire crisis on American arrogance and its policy of fanning the flames of the conflict. Global markets are in turmoil as the 50-day tariff deadline approaches, with commodity price soaring and supply chains seizing up in anticipation of a full-blown economic war. The entire international system seems to be breaking down under the weight of a confrontation that is spiraling out of control. President Trump's strategy of maximum pressure has failed to deter Russia. Instead, it has stripped away the guardrail that once prevented a direct superpower conflict. The threats from Washington have not stopped the bombs. They have only made them fall faster and harder. Russia's violent and defiant response has exposed the limits of American power and has pushed the world into its most dangerous moment in decades. The bombs continue to fall, the death toll continues to rise, and the decision that could ignite a global firestorm now rests in a bunker in Kyiv, a direct consequence of a policy that has backfired in the most catastrophic way imaginable. Many of my listeners, like 70%, have subscribed to my YouTube channel, and so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to So Kane Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched the show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now. And we will continue to build the show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.